Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. For come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And welcome to year 2 of the Battle for the Scratching Post, as I believe we called it last season. I'm going to keep rolling with it because it amuses me. But it's the battle between the K-State Wildcats and the Arizona Wildcats. This edition being held also on a Friday, but this time in Arizona. I believe they're in Phoenix or that general area. No, Tucson. They're in Tucson, Arizona, because Arizona State's in Tempe. But, I mean, this is sort of the two opposite teams, I suppose, coming into this game, where Arizona has had a pretty normal beginning to their season, whereas K-State's beginning has been just about anything but normal. And that isn't me making an excuse for the season. That's simply me stating an objective fact.
Yeah, we were chatting about this pre-episode, and it really has been just like kind of weird, like gimmick after weird gimmick with like Ireland game and starting with the conference game gimmick. The FCS game, I guess, wasn't a gimmick, like unless I guess there's an argument for like paying really bad schools to come play your really good schools being kind of gimmicky, but that's beyond the scope of this discussion, I guess. Triple option is a gimmick in modern college football. That doesn't mean it isn't effective. I'm just calling it like it is. And then, of course, the ever vaunted conference game that isn't actually a conference game on a Friday night in the Western time zone gimmick. So this is a mega gimmick, and it's a nationally televised gimmick as well. And our record in gimmick games and confirmed gimmick games is 0-2, 1-2 if you include a provisionally gimmicky game. But we have to make some exceptions for that one. So,
yeah, and in a lot of ways, this is a very similar team to the Arizona team that we faced last year. The difference is I don't believe they have Tacario Davis, even though some websites still list him as being on the team, mostly a draft projections website. I'm 99% certain that he is not on this team. He was a corner from last year. Of course, they are losing out on who was, in my opinion, the best receiver in college football last year, even including Jeremiah Smith, which, yes, that's a take, apparently. Ted McMillan, but they're returning a lot otherwise in terms of everything else on their roster. And the most important one of that is, of course, the quarterback. But before we get really into any of that, I think it's prudent to do what we always do and just generally talk about their offensive scheming. So, Connor, take it away.
I would love to. I wouldn't really if you think it's but anyway, so on offensive scheming, Arizona's moved a bit more towards embracing wider splits, which we're seeing a bit more in college football. But their identity will always be in the more traditional spread scheme. So a lot of 11 personnel and a lot of RPOs that get the ball out quickly. Yeah,
and I mean, spread offense, if you are among the uninitiated, spread offenses excel at one thing, and that's manipulating space and forcing one-on-ones. Even the traditional spread offense is also known as not the veer and shoot, where you're utilizing every nanometer of space on the field. But their scheme is nothing we haven't seen before. The closest one that I'm thinking of to what we've seen recently would be TCU. That would probably be the closest comp to them, even though TCU's a bit more of an air raid team. But still, in terms of schematics in the passing game, they're very similar.
Yeah, but off of their passing game, most of the running game for Arizona, it's built on counter and power out of shotgun, and more zone looks that they go to from under center.
Which it's pretty rare that you see them go under center, and that's just kind of a virtue of who their quarterback is, which again, he'll get his own time in the sun, but it is a lot of counter, a lot of power, occasional zone split from shotgun. And that's just because those are really the easiest things to do RPOs off of, because they do have a lot of those more RPO-based offensive tendencies like screen passes, slants, and the occasional, yeah, you know what, he's one-on-one, I'm throwing this pill. So, it's a pretty basic running game as well. That there is nothing. Their main focus of this offense is knowing their identity and performing it well, but their identity isn't some freakishly nuanced thing. It's a pretty standard identity that you see a lot of in college football.
Yeah, and we'll go now a little bit more into their passing game, which maybe is what some of you were looking forward to a bit more, because that's kind of what Arizona's been known for the last few years. But they're made up more of 4 foundational concepts with a few others sprinkled in for flavor. So like pretty much every modern offense, they run mesh, which they're running 2 drag routes over the middle meant to create a small rub. So one of them gets free against man coverage. That's one of the first concepts that I kind of got good identifying. K-State did run that quite a bit with Courtney Messingham, particularly on the third downs. But they also run some variations of stick in the quick game, so a short hitch with an out right next to it. And then in the quick game on early downs, a variation of slot smash fade from trips. They're running 2 snag routes and a fade from the middle receiver. And then, of course, the one that most people will know, even if they're a little bit more casual, is 4 verticals. These concepts make up the core of their passing game, and most everything they run outside of those 4 plays are more complementary than staples. And I didn't explain 4 verticals, but it's in the name. So I give it some time and you will figure it out.
Receiver run straight.
Vertical, you might say.
But yeah, it's very much tailored to their offensive schematics, their receiving core, which now includes a former K-State player. And of course, now we get to talk about him. And I said this last year, I'm going to say it again. Noah Fifita, the quarterback for Arizona. I don't know why. I think people just kind of got prospect fatigued with him, and Arizona wasn't bad last year. Noah Fifita was quite simply not the problem last year, because Noah Fifita is, to my mind, it is ridiculous to even say that he is not in the top half of the conference's quarterbacks. And I would honestly try and fight to put him in top 3 or 4.
Yeah, he really did get a bad rap last year. And he wasn't great. Like, certainly took a step back, but he, like you said, he wasn't the problem. There were many other issues at Arizona, but we'll get into kind of this eval now. Last year he was a dark horse draft riser last year, or at least at the start. But being on an Arizona team that had a very bad season, it didn't do him any favors. But despite that, he still has all of the same traits that made him that potential riser to begin with. He's got plus arm strength, generally good accuracy, an ability to extend the play, to get more in the way of shot plays. However, his biggest flaw is that, in some ways, also his strength. He's an extremely aggressive quarterback. There's a thought that a throw is possible for him. He is letting it rip. That's why he's so good in one-on-ones. That gives and it takes. 2023, he had 25 touchdowns, 6 picks. And then last year, 18 touchdowns, 12 picks. So that does cut both ways.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing to note about Noah Fifita is, well, there are 2 major things. One is he's short for a quarterback. He's about my height, which is 5'10". I'm 5'9.5", so he's listed as a little taller than me, which means that he's probably my height. So that does come with its limitations. To be a shorter quarterback, you have to be an elite passer outside of the numbers. And let me tell you something, that Noah Fafita is that in spades. Noah Fafita has the prettiest deep ball of any quarterback that we have evaluated in the duration of this show. And that includes a number 1 overall draft pick in Bryce Young. And to me, it's not, there's no one even really in the same stratosphere as Noah Fafita. PFF agrees. He has completed first off, he's attempting deep shots 20% of his passes, which, good God, that is unheard of. He's attempting deep shots more than he's attacking any intermediate route. So that should already tell you his aggressive nature. And he is completing, if you take the adjusted completion percentage, he's completing 80% of them. Like that is unheard of. But as on account of, him being a shorter quarterback, he's not as good intermediate, and he's especially not as good intermediate over the middle. Now, he is decent at throwing drag routes, but again, when you're throwing drag routes, you just kind of have to know the general vicinity of the quarter or of where your receiver is. So Noah Fafita is probably the best passer that we will see this entire season. I think the only ones that are truly giving him competition, and this is purely as a passer, not as like a true quarterback, because being a true quarterback is more than passing. It's processing, it's so on and so forth. I think the only one that is like as a natural thrower of the football is like Sawyer Robertson. Josh Hoover has like an outside argument, but I think the only one that compares is Sawyer Robertson, who is not the deep passer that Noah Fafita is.
Yeah, Fafita, I was very, very worried about him going into last year's matchup against Arizona, but we mostly contained him despite some gaudy numbers. I mean, he had 268 yards, but he didn't really do any major damage outside of that first drive last year. But that he's not the only notable player on offense, but he's certainly by far the most notable. But that takes us into running back here, Quincy Craig. He's one of the best examples of a home run hitting running back that we have seen in quite a while. Although Arizona definitely uses a running back by committee approach, Craig is the most threatening of them just because of his speed and ability to house just about any touch that he's getting.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just a home run hitting running back, and that also carries with it that he's not the greatest whenever he's actually contacted, whenever he's hit. If you get your hands on him, there's a pretty decent chance that you're going to be able to get him down. However, that's the issue, is getting your hands on him, because he's just extremely, extremely quick. And I mean, if you look at his numbers, only 36 yards after contact have been allowed by him, which isn't a lot. Granted, he only has 156. No one on this team is a particularly prolific rusher, but Quincy Craig, I mean, he's the most worrying simply because he is the fastest, and he's the one that could really burn you if you let him, which he doesn't have a lot in the way of receiving skill set, which you'd expect from a back of his size, but still, speed kills, speed burns, and that's his entire game.
Yeah, and it is a bit weird that he doesn't have much in the way of receiver skills, because he was used a lot as a receiver at his first school at Portland State, but not really here at Arizona. I mean, like, he had 115 carries for 602 yards at Portland State last season, but he had 34 catches for 314 yards and 5 touchdowns each through the air and on the ground, which I guess that goes to show just how prolific of a weapon he is that they were finding multiple ways to get him the ball. But this year, he only has 1 catch for 6 yards. So Arizona is not using him in the same way. but he's averaging over 10 yards a carry right now. Granted, it's through 2 games and just 15 carries with a 54-yarder mixed in, but that does underscore just how good of a rusher and a big play threat that Quincy Craig is.
Yeah, and it is a running back by committee, like I said, but he's the one that definitely worries me the most. And it's a similar story with the receiving room where they do rotate a lot at receiver, including former K-State receiver Trace Spivey, who, yes, I still find justifications to miss. But there's one name that's clearly head and shoulders above the others right now.
Yeah, and that is Javen Whitley or Waitley. Watley? Yeah, Javen Watley. 8 catches, 206 yards, and 2 touchdowns right now. So only averaging 25.8 yards per reception right now.
Bum.
He's kind of flirting with like Byron Pringle levels of yards per catch right now. But he's Fafita's favorite target right now and transferred in from Chattanooga. Don't have a ton of notes on him. He's not a huge receiver. He's 5'10", 167. But I mean, the numbers speak for themselves there. And this isn't new either. He, in 2023, averaged 17.8 yards per catch across the whole season at Chattanooga. So he's a big play guy. Granted, he has the biggest play of his career this year. That's an 85-yard receiving touchdown. But yeah, he's another major weapon to keep an eye on, particularly with our secondary and the last few years, just how much we struggled with explosive plays.
Yeah, and I think another thing to note about it is he mostly plays from the slot, which is another area that K-State has sort of struggled with, is true coverage on a true slot receiver. And whenever you get a slot guy like this who is also just a straight up burner, yeah, I mean, I am losing sleep a little bit on him just being an absolute duster, especially with someone like Noah Fafita, who has such a beautiful deep ball that he can put just about anywhere. So yeah, he's not the outside receiver that Tet McMillan is. Granted, no one is, but he still has the skill set that Noah Fafita is most well equipped to capitalize on, and that's his ability to just sort of take the top off the defense and let Noah Fafita throw it deep. I will say that everyone else around him, as around Watley, is very much a complementary piece where a lot of them are bigger receivers and more contested catch guys, but it really is Watley that is most dangerous in this offense. And the final note before we start talking about the defense and our final thoughts on the offense is the offensive line. Even against Hawaii and Weber State, which, no disrespect to either of them, aren't exactly football powerhouses, they're allowing pressure at 40% of Noah Fafita's dropbacks, which is awful. It is a credit to Noah Fafita that he has been as good a passer as he is, even under that pressure. But still, 40% pressure rate is awful. And I just thought of who my comp is. It's a really lazy comp, but it's also a very true one for Noah Fafita. It's Russell Wilson. Good Russell Wilson, not Giants Broncos Russell Wilson.
Fair enough. But I mean, yeah, it is really easy to kind of lump the short quarterbacks that throw a good deep ball into being just Russell Wilson clones. Like Fafita's certainly his own guy. But I mean, there's just not a long roster of historically good short quarterbacks. So you only have so many guys to pick from. So I don't mind that comp. But Fafita, still a really good quarterback. And I do agree. The rest of the receiver room, like they don't, they aren't like unconcerning. But they're all definitely complimentary, I think, to Watley. I agree with you on that. I guess they're just going out for like tall receivers and just like Tet McMillan hunting or Tetaroa McMillan. Like apparently Tet is like not his nickname, like, and he doesn't know why people call him that. So like he does go by Tetaroa. I keep saying Tet. I don't know why.
I'm gonna listen to this.
I know, but I'd like to respect the man. He's a number one receiver in the NFL for his team right now. So I mean, granted, that team is the Carolina Panthers, but
yeah, fair. Yeah, the other thing that, I mean, the final note that I really have on the offense as a whole is just, yes, the running game exists, but their money gets made in the passing game and on the back of the deep shot. So they want to live and die by the explosive play, which I think speaks even further into the TCU comp. Remember the Max Duggan, Quentin Johnston, Darius Davis team. I think that just sort of speaks to that comp. However, they don't have a Quentin Johnston, which yes, but their offense is definitely talented enough to be worrying, and they don't play as much in terms of complementary football that we saw from someone like Army, but still their defense is definitely not as bad as it was last year.
Which is too bad because their defense was pretty terrible last year. But unfortunately, sometimes teams do get better in the offseason, which is a pain for us. It's a into defensive scheme. It's a rare team. We're being multiple. It's a genuinely pretty apt description. They threw out a lot of looks against Hawaii. They did dial it back against Weber State, but part of that is because they got up big in that game really early. They didn't win by like shocking, like jaw-dropping margins. 48-3 is like nothing to like snore at. But I mean, they were up in that game really quick. It was like 24-0 at the end of the first quarter or something like that. So they definitely took their foot off the gas, particularly in the second half.
Which, valid. It's just a true multiple team is so rare to come across, especially in modern college football where it is, you want to play, you want to do your base defense, and then anything else, if you get it, it's gravy, but you want to have a major, and you want that major to be your focus. And Arizona is kind of different in that they don't have that.
Yeah. And speaking on that, they come out in anything from a sort of hybrid 4-2, which is what K-State's currently running, a 5-man surface with walked up linebackers, and even sometimes they'll break out a 3-3 stack. So they are all over the place. And there's some value to being multiple as well. I mean, it's worked these first 2 games for them.
Yeah. And the downside of being multiple is you run the risk of putting a combination of guys onto the field that don't know that specific assignment, or the guys who are constantly on the field have to remember a lot. And I don't want to say that a lot of their different alignments are for show, because they do run different stuff out of it. But I mean, the primary difference between all of their different alignments is not what coverage they're playing, but really where pressure is coming from. And that speaks very well into the next 2 points, which I kind of view as sister points.
Yeah, I'll just read them off together then. But this sort of multiple thing also, it applies to their coverages. They mostly run match or off man coverages. The idea is to create an umbrella in the defensive backfield so they get some freedom to blitz. But still, match always a little difficult, particularly when run well. I mean, that's Nick Saban and those Bama defenses. They did really well on those match coverages. Baylor at their peak, they ran match, I believe.
They did. And they still do.
Yeah. So it's when done correctly, match coverage is a major pain to deal with. But getting back to blitzing, that's another thing that they really enjoy doing. Even in situations where they're only rushing 4, which technically is not a blitz, they're sending them from unexpected angles and using a lot of simulated pressures to speed up quarterbacks. And so they're trying to. I mean, they're trying to simulate the effect of a blitz, even when they're not actually blitzing. And that's one thing that maybe has me a little bit worried. Is we've seen teams bring the house in critical situations against K-State a few times already this year again, and it's worked really well against K-State, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it is funny to me that Arizona does run. It really sort of adopted this philosophy, and shout out Brett Coleman. That's one of my favorite football content creators. He just did an episode about the Vikings defense run by Brian Flores, which does something extremely similar to what Arizona is currently doing, where it is that pressure heavy scheme where you do have those guys playing over the top. And the Vikings is one of the best schematic defenses in the league. I don't think Arizona quite gets to, best defense schematically in college football. I don't think they've elevated to that point. But the principles that they operate, now it's your cat meowing. I remember when it was mine. But it operates on a very similar principle of speed up the quarterback, make them make mistakes. And I'll sort of speak to the next bullet point because I forgot to say that they were triplets, not just twins. But the desire to increase the quarterback's internal tempo, sort of that internal clock of, I have this long until I'm going to get hit, is why they are so good at generating turnovers, or at least they have been so early on in the year. Granted, Weber State, Hawaii, and Hawaii's offensive system, there's a reason why they are the only team that still runs the run and shoot offense. And it's because it is insanely turnover prone because everyone has to be on the exact same page. And the moment that someone isn't, congratulations, you're not throwing an incomplete pass. You're throwing a turnover. You're throwing an interception. That's always been the downside with the run and shoot, which that's a completely different can of worms for what the run and shoot is. But suffice to say, I feel like I could maybe explain match coverage a little bit. Think of it as zone coverage with man coverage principles. So instead of having a specific man on the field or a specific part of grass that you're supposed to be covering, you are instead given a collection of rules, or which you can view as if-then statements. So say you're an outside corner and your if-then statement is, if the receiver runs an in-breaking route, I bite down on that route and try to pinch. So you're basically playing that man coverage. If he plays outside, this is backwards. It would be play outside, play man coverage. If he bites inside, the match rule would probably be drop back or at least bump. So think of it as you don't have a specific man. You don't have a specific area of the field. You have rules that you follow. And that isn't the greatest way to explain it, but it's the simplest way that's technically true. Because, I posted on Twitter, I think it was about a couple weeks ago at this point, someone a few years ago posted Dave Aranda's quarters, like his match quarters rule set that he has. Man, I there are some things on there that I'm just like, okay, dude, what are you talking about? And that's me.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of Dave Aranda's reputation, though, is that he is a bit of a mad scientist, particularly with defenses, which, he was the DC for the LSU title team, right? Like, that was his.
He was also a DC at Utah State with Matt Wells as the head coach.
No kidding. We should go poach Dave Aranda. They can't possibly be that hard. But I think that takes us through all the bullet points on their defense. So now we can get a little bit more specific with their players and get into some notable ones. The first one, Chase Kennedy, linebacker, number 7. I love that number pairing with a linebacker. But he's one of those pesky hybrid players who rotates in on pass rushing downs. He has a very good ability to leverage his athleticism and disguise his blitz until just before the snap. He's definitely a much better finesse than power guy, but his creativity with how he gets to the quarterback to generate pressure is what makes him so much of a threat in this defense. And also, the name Chase Kennedy just kind of rolls off the tongue. Like, he has the name of like a star player. Like, to me, like sometimes it feels like sports players have names where you look at it and you're like, yeah, that's the name of a star player, like Aaron Judge or Bobby Witt. Like, I hear those names and I'm like, yeah, those guys are good at baseball and that makes complete sense to me. Then you have a guy like Paul Skeens, and he's good in spite of his name.
Jansen Young. Jansen Young.
Yeah, that sounds like third level, like European League goalie. Like,
Real person. But you're gonna love the next name. Then you're gonna love their safety. But yeah, he's very much a player who really would struggle to. If it wasn't this specific scheme, he would be an okay off-ball linebacker, but this specific scheme really highlights the best parts of his game, and that's his creativity whenever he is blitzing. So, I mean, just kind of look for him when he's on the field if you're the quarterback, because, spoiler alert, a lot of these guys technically aren't getting the full load of the snaps, with the exception of, well, I guess half of them are getting the full load of the snaps. So 2 you have are situational passing down guys, and then 2 are sort of their every down players. But Chase Kennedy is definitely one of their NASCAR package guys for pass rushing situations.
And that takes us into the next player, and that is Genesis Smith, the safety. He's a free safety on this team, and he plays definitely the most snaps out of anyone. He does just about everything that you'd want a true free safety to do as well. Although his best trait is his ability to make tackles and stop bleeding that might have otherwise occurred or arrived on a play. His ability to play his assignment and quarters coverage in particular is really impressive. And he's been a busy man so far this year, tied for the team lead in total tackles. He's one behind the team lead in total tackles and has a pass deflection and an interception.
Yeah, to me, Genesis Smith is sort of like the prototypical college quarters safety, where quarters is a too high safety look or a too high safety coverage. So you do have both safeties sort of playing back, and quarters is you take a quarter of the field and that's your responsibility. Again, with match, things get complicated, but for the sake of not making this episode 48 hours long trying to explain match coverages, just for the sake of simplicity, he has a quarter of the field and he covers it. And a lot of that is you do have to blend skill sets. Like, you can't be a true strong safety in a quarters defense, and you can't be a true center fielding safety. I mean, you can, but being a center fielding safety means you're sacrificing a little bit more in the way of tackling ability, and he definitely doesn't do that. So he's good in coverage in that he has very, very good coverage instincts, but he also has a really good ability and a quick trigger to come downhill whenever a pass is thrown in front of him. And it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think he showcased it this year, but for some reason, he just has the vibes of someone who will try to decapitate a player if a hospital ball is thrown his way. He just has the vibes of it. And I'm not saying that is a negative thing or as a critique on his character. I think that that's one of the biggest skill sets that you could have as a free safety.
Yeah, that takes us into the next notable player. That's Tay Brown, linebacker. Uh, Compared to Chase Kennedy, he's a much more traditional linebacker, and he's more of an every down guy. Although he is that more traditional linebacker when it comes to positioning, he still has a hybrid player skill set in him, mostly in that he is more than capable of eating blocks. That said, he doesn't excel at any one thing. So it makes him struggle a bit with down to down consistency, but at the same time, it makes him also not have any like glaring major weaknesses.
Yeah, and to me, he's what happened. Tay Brown and Chase Kennedy could probably be pretty interchangeable. Like if you just change the positions and the assignments, I do think they have it right. I do think that Chase Kennedy's creativity makes him better as a pass rushing linebacker, but Tay Brown is better as sort of a traditional linebacker who may not be the greatest in coverage, but that also might just be because, I mean, he's doing everything. I mean, if you look at the statistics, the grading, he has an equal amount of run defense, pass rushing, and coverage snaps, which is exceedingly rare to have all of those be in that same tool belt. So he's sort of the wild card, and to keep with the card analogies, jack of all trades, master of none. But that still has value in a defense like this.
Yep, and that takes us to the last player that we wanted to talk about specifically on the Arizona defense, and that's Malachi Bailey. He's an edge rusher and a transfer from Alcorn State. He is the designated outside power rusher, someone who will line up out wide, and he's trying to deposit the offensive tackle into the quarterback's lap. He does this really well, actually. He has a total of 5 pressures this year. So even though he doesn't get a lot in the way of sacks, getting to actually finishing the job and getting to the quarterback, he's still a threat that you have to watch for because of how easy he makes it for other people to clean up because he got the quarterback off of his spot. So kind of an unsung hero sort of figure in terms of his effectiveness as a pass rusher, where every team kind of has that guy that is constantly getting pressure but isn't really getting a lot of sacks.
So George Karlaftis is the comp for Malachi Bailey, where he's going to play really solid run defense. He's going to be really hard to move. He's going to be really strong and powerful. He's not going to get too many sacks, but he's going to get a lot in the way of pressure and making guys uncomfortable. I mean, he's only credited with half a sack on this year. If we were counting pressures where they're going away from him and walking to someone else, he'd probably have all of the team's sacks. But yeah, his biggest thing is just winning with power. Like he is just going to try and play bully ball with a bull rush. He doesn't really have anything else in his bag of tricks. And honestly, if you have a good bull rush, that's most of the time all you need. So all in all, the defense, just because of the defense that they play, where they play a lot of match coverage, I know that it's possible to beat it. However, that does not mean that it is easy, especially when they're going to throw so many different blitz looks at them. Again, coverage looks mostly going to be the same. It's just a matter of figuring out, okay, when are they going to blitz me? Where are they blitzing from? Is that guy on the end of the line of scrimmage dropping? Is the guy on the opposite end of the line of scrimmage going to do a sim pressure in his stead? So it's going to be a matter of Avery not panicking and getting a running game going, because I mean, Weber State and Hawaii both have notoriously not good running games, and that's just because they're pass focused teams. So in a lot of ways, Arizona was uniquely equipped to beat them alongside just being better than them. And if this was, we'll get into I didn't write any stories because at this point, the stories are just vibes anyway, and the vibes are kind of awful. So, but in a lot of ways, I think that last year's team, from a play calling standpoint, would have been better equipped to face this Arizona team. But that doesn't mean that I think Matt Wells isn't capable of scheming up passes against this type of defense, because I've seen him do it with lesser personnel, with a bigger talent differential with Utah State. I'm looking back at specifically the Chucky Keaton game up against USC, and then the Jordan Love game up against, I think it was Michigan State. Those are the two I'm thinking of. Both teams that play a lot of sort of off-man coverages or quarters coverages. Matt Wells was able to guide Chucky Keaton, who was good until his kneecaps exploded, and then Jordan Love, who was a first-round pick and is now a very, very good NFL quarterback. He was able to scheme that up, and I do have faith in Matt Wells' ability to scheme up the running game or the passing game. The question just remains about the running game.
Yeah, particularly when K-State's run game has been shown to be toothless so far this year, no matter who we're facing. We really got used to the running game working, just kind of being a given as K-State fans. I think with Deuce Vaughn and DJ Giddens, I think we were a bit spoiled, even though we did have some rough spots last year. We had a few games where the run game just didn't really pop the way that we were used to, but I think DJ was able to kind of cover some of the blemishes there just because of how incredibly talented he is. The passing game has still been effective for K-State despite the shortcomings in the run game for the most part. But we're not going to be able to get away with being so one-dimensional offensively for very long. Now, Matt Wells may still be able to scheme up some good passing stuff, but the offense's days are numbered if we can't get the running game going, particularly against better quality opponents.
Yeah, and this is the first first normal Power 4 test, and then I remembered, oh wait, this game isn't normal, it's a Friday game.
Yeah, this is a gimmick, and it's a conference, not a conference game. So,
okay, so here's the plan. If we win this game, right, we swap out the Iowa State conference game. Say that one was the non-conference game.
You're right. We can change the rules partway through the year. I mean, the Big 12 conference did have the tiebreakers, so there's no reason that we can't just slide some paperwork around and be like, oh, we submitted the wrong forms, guys. That's our bad. Here they are. So,
yeah, I will say that on the defensive side of the ball, my primary concern is just containing the deep shot, which I will say, to K-State's credit, they did a pretty decent job of against Iowa State. Don't know why they didn't do that up against North Dakota. I think it's just we got too cute and tried to play a little bit over aggressive, but that just kind of happens, especially early on in the season. Yeah. Do we have the horses to play coverage against this team? I mean, one-on-one coverage, every receiver in Power 4 is going to be able to get theirs if you give them enough chances. But on the aggregate, I don't think the receiving core terrifies. It doesn't put the fear of God into me. It is slightly worrying, though.
Yeah. And individually, you think back to North Dakota, there were a few decent deep coverage performances and solo coverage. Zayshawn Rich had a great rep in pass coverage after a turnover, and they immediately shot at the end zone, and Zayshawn was left on an island and had played perfect coverage, very reminiscent to Jacob Parrish and his interception against Oklahoma State last year. It was pretty much the exact same deal, except it was on the other side of the end zone and resulted in a PBU and not a pick. So it's possible for some of these guys, I think. I think the question is when it gets less vertical and starts throwing in some post routes, because it really seems like the confusion the last several years has been with the safeties in particular, although there have been some coverage lapses for corners. One of the late North Dakota scores was one of the corners missed a deep third assignment.
That would be Justice Clemens.
Yeah, so that was that issue. We're also starting to get a little bit deeper into our cornerback roster right now. Kanangel Thomas was getting some run against Army. We did not see Donovan McIntosh at all in that game. He did not take a snap, which, as a Donovan McIntosh believer, probably deserved, because he did not have a good game against North Dakota. But still.
I also think that some of that was a schematic choice, because we also played a lot of Quay Moss on the outside. So we were deploying a lot more of like slot corners, because they tend to be better in run defense. Zayshawn Rich, I mean, you still have to have your number one corner out there somewhere. But yeah, also, their complete aside, I forgot to mention this on the episode, there was another deep third assignment blown. I think it was by Quay Moss, and just Army didn't catch it. And this was on a drive going towards the north end zone. And I know that because it was heading right towards me. And I saw my life flash before my eyes. And luckily, the quarterback just did not see the guy streaking wide open in the corner of the end zone. I think he ended up scrambling for like a yard on that play. But to me, winning this game comes down to very basic things. Don't turn the ball over. They're not going to be able to sustain drives like Army did. That is simply not what they are going to do. They're going to try and eat their cake and try to eat it all in one bite. So if you're able to prevent them from getting that deep shot, if you do frustrate Noah Fafita enough, because he will say, he will take his one-on-one shots, and he's very good at it. But that gunslinger mentality can come back to bite him, even if you have a talent differential even if you have a talent differential between receivers and defensive backs. Like, getting over aggressive as a quarterback is a thing. And I think that Noah Fafita is especially susceptible to it, just because of the amount of faith that he has in his arm. So the main story on defense is going to be trying to punish Arizona's aggressiveness. So aggressive coverage rotations. If you see a guy running deep, like, you have to have, oddly enough, this would be a good time for K-State to adopt more in the way of match coverages. I know they run some of it, but having specific rules of like, okay, this guy's running vertical, we need to get a bracket on him, and we need that as a side adjustment. But yeah, and on offense, it's just going to be it's going to be the opposite, honestly. It's going to be willing to, the moment that you see someone blitzing, the difference between, I've said this before on episodes, the difference between a good quarterback and a great quarterback is their reaction to getting blitzed. A good quarterback is, oh, well, I have to speed myself up a little bit when they're getting blitzed, and they just kind of take it as something that happens. A great quarterback gets excited whenever they are getting blitzed, because that is one fewer guy to disrupt them throwing the football. That is one fewer guy in coverage. So this is where Avery needs to put on the big boy pants, and he's been doing pretty well against the blitz, honestly, whenever he's been given apt time at hitting his checkdowns. But this is sort of nut up or shut up time. You're going to get blitzed a lot. You need to have that answer found out quickly. So I guess that now leads us into MVP projections and score projections, unless you have anything else on the notes that I have espoused for the last probably 5 minutes.
I guess the only thing I'll say is that Arizona, probably compared to the very disciplined teams we've played so far this year, is probably going to be the least. And that probably has something to do with the fact that we've played two just like traditionally like ridiculously disciplined and tough teams in Iowa State and Army. That's like for those two schools in particular, like most of their brand. Then North Dakota was a fairly disciplined team as well. And Arizona has struggled a little bit on that front. They're still kind of establishing their identity. So I guess we'll find out which team is less tough, I guess, in this game. So,
but anyway, Connor, who are your picks for offensive and defensive MVPs?
Offensively, I'm just going to keep saying Avery, I guess. I think I said Jace last week, but he actually kind of had a quiet game for the first time this season. Wasn't a horrid game, but it wasn't what we were used to. So I'll say Avery. Defensively, I guess I'll say Toby. Last week wasn't a great week for him in like regards to his skill set. I mean, just by virtue of facing a triple option team, you're just not going to get as many opportunities to rush the quarterback. And even when they did drop back, it was pretty quick. They were pretty quick to get rid of it for the most part. So hopefully Toby has some built up energy. And he's been named as someone that's kind of been stepping up in the locker room over the last week to try and rally the team. So I'm hopeful that he's going to come out with some extra energy and get to Noah Fafita early and often.
We're in lockstep when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. It pretty much has to be Avery Johnson for any time K-State wishes to win, with very rare exception. But on the defensive side of the ball, I'm actually going to – hello, Wunkos. I'm going to go with – that's my cat who just jumped on my lap. Connor can see her.
Hi, Wunkos.
Yes, but I'm going to go with Quay Moss because to me that's going to be good on good. Quay Moss up against Watley. So it's going to come down – I think that this game is going to ultimately come down to that matchup. So if K-State is going to win, Quay Moss is going to – be able to, I don't want to say stop, but be able to at least keep Watley out of the end zone and keep them from stretching the field too vertically with him. So now we get into score projections and sort of what happens on Friday. I think that this is going to be an uncomfortable game for K-State. However, I think that this is also a game that you're going to be able to determine within the first 5 to 7 minutes whether or not K-State is going to win or lose. That to me is how this feels. If K-State's able to keep Arizona out of the end zone for the first 5 to 7 minutes of the game, I think they win. If they do give up an early explosive play, I think that may end up serving as a backbreaker against a team that I don't want to question mental toughness. I'm not in the locker room, but there has been times that it seems like they have reached a breaking point, and I think especially coming off of a heartbreaker up against Army, where the offense just simply never was allowed to touch the football. I think it does come down to what happens in those first minutes, and I think the coaching staff is going to know that and play a very, very aggressive brand of football. With that said, I do have K-State walking away victorious in a nail-biter. I'm going to project 31 to, we'll go 28 in favor of K-State.
I'm for the first time in a while going to project a loss. I like to be optimistic on this show. Just about as much, probably more than I like being like trying to be rational and like grounded in reality. But I say this a lot on this show and use it to justify decisions on how I view other teams. And it's the tried and true, I'll believe it when I see it. And this team hasn't really shown me, unfortunately, that they can get on the right side of the scoreboard against frankly, a team that's anywhere close to us in terms of talent and stature as a program. So I'm predicting a loss. Unfortunately, I don't want to. but I think we're going to lose. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, 41-38.
Boo this man.
I hope I am wrong. I think the last time I predicted a loss, it's been like a few years, I think.
Texas 23.
Okay. That was what I was thinking of. I was going to say OU in 22. I think I definitely predicted a loss for that game. That was like one of the memorable K-State games in recent memory. But I do think I predicted a loss for that Texas game as well. I think you're correct. But the point is that I don't predict a lot of losses because I like to be happy, and K-State winning makes me happy. So, but unfortunately, Chris Kleiman has a personal vendetta against my state of mind and has made this team poor and bad. So,
I think it's also the first time that you and I have not agreed on a win or loss projection.
I think you might be right on that, actually. I don't know if there are any Alley frat house members out there that keep track, because we sure don't. But I have no idea off the top of my head.
I can't think of another game where that would have been the case. I mean, I know we both projected a loss in the Sugar Bowl. God, I remember the hope for that game. It was so great to have that for a quarter.
Yeah, it's crazy. They just postponed and canceled the game after the first quarter because Nick Saban was crying so much.
Yep. Do you have any final notes for the Arizona game before we sign off?
I really hope we turn the season around, because it is not as fun talking about K-State football when they are not good. And it's even worse when they're not good and had high expectations. So let's change that this week.
I mean, hey, only have one conference loss. Here's how the path to art. Here's how Bernie can still win. But thank you all for
get political.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to follow or contact the show, you can follow us just about anywhere at Aggieville Alleycats. And if you want to email us, we're AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at ACEdwards00.
I'm at Connor Baltzor, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store, link found in our podcast and Twitter bio. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. For come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.